And what I am going to do is I'm going to hand over to Gavin because he's actually leading today's event. We weren't sure if he was going to be here because he was in court this morning. But I can see he's here. He was representing the local authority. He hasn't done anything wrong. Don't worry. I'll hand you over. I'll hand you over to Gavin, who's leading this event. Well done, Gavin, for getting here.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I like the fact that you had to add that I hadn't done anything wrong. But yeah, so today we're obviously gathering together all of our IFA providers, or as many as could make it, to do the first of what's going to be a series of provider forums every quarter. We're going to put on a different one with different themes. At the end, you'll be asked with an evaluation form if you've got particular things you'd like to see. So if today you listen through and go, actually, I'd really like to have seen this or that, you'll have a chance to suggest that for our next forum when we meet again. And we will today just have people from Cambridgeshire presenting, but going forward, we're looking to have some exciting guests. So, you know, I'd really encourage you to look out for future events as well. If we start with some introductions, I take it you didn't introduce people, Chris?
I did not, no.
Okay, excellent. So I'll start with myself. So I'm Gavin Mullin. I am a commissioning manager for Children in Care. My kind of portfolio specialises with the IFA market, but also I head up our Access to Resources placement team. So many of you will have had interactions with various people throughout my team over the previous weeks and months, and we'll have more of that going forward. I'm really keen to get out and meet more of you guys as well over the coming months. So hopefully we can meet up going forward as well, and we can have a bit more of an informal conversation than we're going to have today. If I move on to Chris, who obviously started off today, do you want to introduce yourself if you didn't, Chris?
Thanks, Gavin. Yeah, I'm Chris Howard. I'm also a commissioning manager. I sit alongside Gavin, and my responsibility is our supported accommodation and residential services. So it's nice to meet you all. And I have also been out on a couple of our IFA QA visits as we kind of spread that responsibility across the team. So you may see me in and around.
Yep. Thanks, Chris. And then our kind of head of service, Lucy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. Hi, everybody. Welcome, as Gavin says, to what's the first of many provider forums in the IFA sphere. So welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Lucy Muntz, and I recently joined as head of commissioning here back end of last year.
Thank you. I'm just having a look to see if we've got any of our other colleagues on. So I think we'll have some more people join later on who can introduce themselves. And I'll just run through a bit of the agenda now if we move on to the next slide, Chris. Yeah, so we're going to start off hearing a bit about the voice of the child. We're going to move on to the really exciting world of procurement, which is really exciting because in our DPS, we will, over the coming months, have various other opportunities in addition to just your standard IFA placements. And in order to be eligible to apply for those, you need to be on that DPS. That is worth looking out for. We'll be talking a bit about the current picture and looking at some data. Then we'll move into looking at our children's sufficiency strategy refresh work that Caroline Townsend will present. We'll look at a bit of contract management and expectations, which we're going to be looking for you guys to input into, and then having a bit of a discussion about our teenage cohort, which we all know is one of those cohorts that's a bit more challenging to place in foster care. And then moving on to the new fee uplift process, which again will be a really exciting thing for you guys, because I'm sure you'll all be wanting to know how and when to apply for your fee uplifts and what our policy is going to be on those. So if I could hand over for the voice of the child.
Yeah, so obviously you'll notice that I'm not Ollie Grant. I am actually Chris Howard. Unfortunately, Ollie couldn't be here today, so I'm kind of filling in for her. So Ollie Grant leads our IRO service, so the Children and Young People's Independent Reviewing Officers, and they do a lot of work around the voice of the child and speaking to the children and young people that they're responsible for, along with the social work teams and the children's social workers. So Ollie has put together this kind of a short collection of the young people's voices that her IROs have spoken to and their views over the since Christmas time. So she has divided it up into three age groups. The first age group that you can see there, which a number of you will support, is our 5 to 10-year-olds. The most common comment from children in this age group was that they liked where they lived, which is good, which is usually in a foster home. So the majority of our young people in this age group do live in foster care homes, which you guys kindly support us with. You can see kind of some of the things they've said down the right hand side, but obviously the standout one there, which has 13 responses, is that they said they liked where they live, which is good. In the kind of orange box there is a comment from a young person that lives in a children's home, which they said they also liked. And kind of some comments from the same young person about wanting to see their family more, which is, obviously not uncommon, and how that is supported. So that is the kind of a collective voice of our 5 to 10-year-olds, and Ollie and her team will be continuing this work throughout the year. So our next age group cohort is 11 to 15-year-olds. Again, the sample size that across the age range that Ollie's team spoke to was 60 young children and young people. Again, the most common thread within this cohort was that they liked where they live, and 1/3 of this cohort of the cohort of 60 that were in the 11 to 15-year-old bracket were living in children's home, and 2/3 were with foster carers. So again, strong comments around they liked where they live and things were good, that they had no worries with. It was nice to see that a number of young people commented they felt school and college was going well. Obviously there are some things there that children have said they would still like support with, and a kind of conflicting comment there from a young person. Obviously felt they were really well supported by their foster carers, but also said they wanted to go home as well, which is something I'm sure you're all familiar with. And again, a very positive, I don't know if which young person was this young person was, but obviously this foster carer was taking them on holiday to Spain in the summer, which they were really excited about. So very, very positive comments there. And then our final cohort of young people is 16 and 17-year-olds. Excuse me. Most commonly, this cohort of young people were living in supported accommodation. I guess this is kind of where you'd expect to see, although you'd see it across the range of young people, but more often within this range, it would be about their worries about what the future holds for them as they move much closer to adulthood. But again, at the bottom, a strong number of young people saying they really liked where they live and they have no worries. But again, talking about needing some more support with money and clothes and moving on and contact with family. And in the blue box there, slightly different comment around from the previous two age groups around them not seeming to be bothered about seeing their family, just their brothers who are important to you, important to them. And they're taking responsibility for managing that alongside their social worker. So but again, positive that they feel that they're lucky in life, and they're expecting things to work out as they hope. So and the final slide in relation to the voice of is the collective sample there. So that's all of the age groups put together, and a total sample size of 60. So over 35, probably about 37 children out of the 60 said that they liked where they live. So that's positive for them, and for us and for you guys. So I hope that I've kind of summed up those that work. I know that Ollie wanted to be here and apologise for not being able to be here, but this is work that her IROs and her service will continue to do, and it will continue to feed in not just into kind of events like this, but the care planning for the young people, and how they move forward in terms of their lives with us. So I hope that I've done that justice, and I will hand back to whoever's next. Gavin.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, the voice of the child is something that in Cambridgeshire we want to get more and more of. We want to be using that to help shape the services that we put on, to make sure that they are the ones that not just are good for the child, but that the child actually wants as well. So that's definitely an area that we're looking to expand and include more and more as we go forward. So you'll see more voice of the child work as we meet regularly. If I now pass over to my colleague from procurement, David Isaacs, to just do a little bit about our placement DPS.
Hello everyone, my name's Dave. Although the person managing the DPS is actually called Mira, I'm standing in for her today. So I'm just going to talk you through how to actually apply to join the DPS. First thing to note is there are four lots on the DPS. There's the provision of independent fostering agencies, then there's the residential children's homes, independent schools and education providers, and out-of-school tuitions. The one that will apply to you is the first lot, although if other lots are of interest to you, you can apply to those as well. Next slide, please. So we use a website called Proactis to publish our tenders. It's on there. Well, if you just search Proactis in Google or Bing or whatever search engine you use, it should come up as the first result. Click on that link and it will take you through to their front page. This is the opportunities page. This is where tenders are listed. It's not just our council that use Proactis. There's councils all across the country. So if you work in other areas, you might be familiar with this from perhaps tendering for other councils as well. On the side there, you can see there's that narrow your results bit. That allows you to filter by council, or you can use the search function at the top and just type in children's external placements, which is the name of this DPS, and it will reduce the number of results to just the relevant ones. Clicking on the title will show you what's on the next page, I believe. So this is the advert. This just gives you a brief overview of what the tender is about. First thing you need to do is view the advert, make sure it's the correct tender that you're interested in, and click the register button, the register interest in this opportunity, the green button there with the big blue arrow pointing at it. This adds the tender to your list of activities, kind of like a basket, if you will. You know how you might go on Amazon, see products that you like, you add them to your basket before finally purchasing them. With this, fairly similar, you go through looking at tenders that you're interested in, you add them to your list of activities before finally applying for those tenders. So the process doesn't stop here in registering your interest. You have to go through and fill in the forms as well. Next slide, please. So this is back on the home page. So once you've clicked that button, you go back to the home page, and here is the list of activities. So you click on recently added, it will show it there, and you click on the title to progress to the next page. Before I do that though, I'll just explain quickly that if you are not already registered, you will need to set up an account on Proactis to be able to tender. When you click the green button on the previous page, it will say, if you're not already registered, it will say you need to register. It will take you through to the registration page, and that just asks you generic stuff like, what's your email address, what password do you want to set, what's your company name, all those standard sorts of details, just to set up your account. And what's also useful is it doesn't set up one account, it sets up two accounts. One account is for your organization, one account is for you as a user within your organization. If you're the person creating your organization account, you'll default as the administrator, and you can then set up accounts for other people within your organization. If they go on the website and try to register an account, it will kick it back and say this organization already exists, speak to your admin. And the handy thing about that is if somebody is off sick, your colleague who has an account can log in and pick up where you left off, for example. Or if you need to collaborate, say you need to give access to somebody from finance team in your organization, or somebody who's more skilled in legal areas, they can have access to, and then you can work on tenders together. Anyway, so getting back to the actual application, next page, please. So when you go into the tender itself, you'll see a brief description at the top, just so that you can check it's still the correct tender that you've clicked on. Below that, you'll see a list of documents available, so make sure you read those carefully. There are a lot of documents on this tender. You only need to read the ones that are relevant to you, but make sure you do read those thoroughly. You'll have things like the terms and conditions, the tender document that tells you about the tender process and how it works and how it's scored. And then supplementary documents as well, such as like how fees are calculated or made. Apologies for all the coughing. Also on this page, you'll have a countdown timer that tells you how long till the deadline for this round. Something very useful about running this as a DPS is it's done in rounds. So you can see on this screenshot here, it says there's 2 months, 6 hours till the next round, till the round closes. So that would be the deadline for submitting applications for this round. If you were unsuccessful, there will be another round, and you can apply in that round as well. You'll get feedback on your bid if you're unsuccessful, and it will tell you why you weren't successful and what you could do to improve. So go away, make those changes, reapply. There's no limit on how many times you can reapply throughout the life of the tender. So even if you're unsuccessful the second time, you'll get feedback again. You can go away, make more changes, and then reapply again. You won't be excluded from applying. Below the countdown timer is the messages and clarifications. So if you have a question about any of the documents or any of the process, go in there and you can send your message to my colleague Mira. It will only go to her, it won't go to anybody else. You can accidentally send confidential information to a competitor, for example. That's not possible. You can only message Mira. She will collate the clarifications into a spreadsheet where it will have a list of questions and then a list of answers to those questions. And then she publishes those publicly so that everybody has access to the same information. And the clarification log is a supplementary document to the ones on the main page here. If you haven't got any clarification questions, make sure you still go into that messaging area and check for the most recent clarification log. That will contain everything asked to date, and read those carefully, because they may contain things that you might not have occurred to you that will be very useful to you. Below that, you've got your response bit, and you've got some traffic light indicators there to show you your progress. As you can see on this test one, it's all red at the moment. And then below that, you've got the start my response. So that's where you actually begin building your response. This page just contains information that you need. The next page is where you actually begin crafting your response. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. So it doesn't have a screenshot of it, but normally on the next page, it would just show a picture of the questionnaire. It's like an online form. You have a list of questions. You go into each one and answer it as fully and as truthfully as possible. There are 6 questionnaires, but you just do the ones that apply to you. So for this particular subject, it would just be the first questionnaire, which is the all lots questionnaire, that asks generic things about your organization and status, financial standing, all that boring generic stuff that everybody has to fill in. And then the second questionnaire would be for lot 1 only, and that would ask questions specific to lot 1 that you need to fill out in order to apply for this lot. And as I said earlier, if you're interested in other lots, you can bid for those. You will need to fill in the questionnaires for those lots as well to apply for them. So I've already covered what's on this slide. So as I've said, this works similar to a framework. This is just to get onto the DPS. It's basic vetting, making sure that you're an organisation that we can use before making any placements with you. So it speeds up the placement process by having got all the generic stuff over and done with in one go at the start of the process. As I say, it's similar to a framework, but the advantage of a DPS is that if you're unsuccessful, you can reapply, and you're encouraged to do so. And that's it from me, actually. I don't think there's another slide.
No, that's the last slide.
That's the last slide. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, and I'll hand back to Gavin.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions about the DPS that they want to ask? Lucy?
Thank you, Gavin. I just wanted to ask if we could understand those providers that have joined us around the room today, if there are any that are already part of the DPS or not. Just a bit of I could get a rough idea of in the comments, but really, really keen to make sure that obviously this is our compliant route to market in line with the public contract regulations. Having a flexible pseudo DPS, as David has mentioned, is really helpful, because that means we've got an open every frequency of how often we open it can be determined, but we tend to do it every sort of 6 months, and it means it's always a window of opportunity for IFAs that may have applied historically or haven't yet applied, have the opportunity to join. So it's really important for us that we get as many IFAs as possible to be part of that pseudo DPS.
Sorry, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. How do we know? It's a silly question. How do we know if we're on DPS or not?
Oh, you will receive a letter through the website. So in the messaging area that I pointed to earlier, where clarifications are asked, once the round has closed, we will go through an evaluation process where we look through the bids, check everything's in order. And if you are successful or unsuccessful, either way, you will get a letter with feedback through the messaging area.
But what I meant is, how do we know if we already are on DPS?
If you're already on the DPS?
Yeah, it's only because when I joined the company, that was after our last framework, which we are on with you at the moment.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not quite sure whether
you're new to the company, so you don't know if somebody else has already done it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
what's the?
You can ping me an email.
Yeah.
If
you send us an email, we can check.
Is it to
respond to you.
Chris Howard? Yeah.
You can email Chris Howard or myself. Chris
Okay.
will. Yeah, we'll either of us will be able to check for you.
What was your name? Sorry again.
David Isaacs.
Could we
Okay,
also,
no problem. Thank you.
Yeah.
would it be helpful to share a copy of the link as well for those that may not have already joined or are not sure? If we could just share a copy of the link of how to apply, that might be helpful for you as well, just so you can see where to access it. We will keep regularly communicating with our markets anyway when we reopen the DPS, so we'll make sure everybody's made aware, and we can bring that back to these events as we hold them quarterly. But if we can share the link, that'd be really helpful, so you've got access.
Here's the link in the chat to just the general link to pro contract opportunities, and below that I'll add in the link for the DPS as well.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. Yeah, so being on the DPS for the IFA market makes a big difference. When we have a young person we want to place, it goes out to those who are on our contracted DPS first, and about 80% of our IFA placements are then made with DPS providers. So if you're not on the DPS, you only see a really small proportion of our overall cohort. If you're on the DPS, you get to see everyone, and you also get the opportunity, as I said, to apply for any kind of mini comp where we put together a specific service that we would then tender via the DPS for those who are already on it. So it is worth your while. You do get various advantages, and yeah, we then will look to build those relationships with everyone who is on our DPS. If we go on to the next slide, Chris, just a little bit about the current picture and where we're at in terms of placements in Cambridgeshire. So the first graph has the blue line, which shows our children in care population. You can see over the last year, it's been fairly steady, varying from about 620-ish up to about 650, 660, depending on the month. And that's been, as I say, fairly constant throughout the year. The smaller orange line is what we call purchase placements. There, every placement we make with external providers, be that an IFA, a residential home, supported accommodation, whatever it might be. And again, that's a fairly steady figure at about 280 odd placements at any one time. And then the smaller grey line is our UASC population. It is again relatively steady. It is increasing slightly, but because of the size, it's more difficult to tell. To about 120. We are below our capacity for UASC, so we are taking more, and we do expect to see those increase over the coming years. Most of those UASC placements, of course, wouldn't be with yourselves. Most of them that come in, they go into a supported accommodation, but we do have some that require IFA support. The next graph shows just how busy we are in terms of referrals coming in and the placements that we have made. So the blue line shows the number of children that are referred in for a placement, and the yellow line then shows the number of placements that are made month by month, again with the smaller line for, you know, the grey lines for the UASC population. And this chart you can see is a lot more varied month to month, depending on, you know, what's going on out there in the market. It does peak generally around the kind of holiday times, as I'm sure everyone on the call will understand why that is. Just in terms of the fact that during holidays, it can be a little bit more complex. We can have some more breakdowns, which lead to more referrals. But we also sometimes see peaks in terms of the number of people being referred in for the first time becoming looked after. Likewise, the blue lines that show when we actually made the placement are then tracked by the yellow lines for placements made. You can see they don't equal itself out month to month, so we don't always place a child in the same month that we've got the referral in, but overall they average out to about the same numbers. and you can see just how busy we might be month to month. If we move on to the next slide, Chris. So these ones are more specific for the fostering market. You can see on the first graph that, again, it's a really variable amount of referrals that we receive month to month. It has declined slightly during the course of last year, going down from about 30 on average to 26, but that's not necessarily a sign of what's going to come in the future. I think that's more because of when Christmas happens to fall in the year, and if we'd chosen to make a graph that put Christmas at the start of the year, the line would tend upwards. So it's a bit of a false trend that's driven by the fact that throughout the Christmas period we do have slightly less referrals than we do at other points in the year. And then the next graph looks at the total number of placements made for fostering. Again, it's got a very similar trend. What you will notice is that we tend to make about 5 fewer placements for fostering than we get referrals in. And there's a number of reasons for that. Sometimes we'll get referrals in that then don't need placements. Sometimes we'll get those referrals in and then those children will be asked to be placed into a different kind of accommodation. So those numbers are slightly lower than the referral numbers. And then the third graph shows a bit of an interesting picture about where people are placed, be it with an IFA or with our in-house service, or whether it might be with another local authority or something like that. So the blue line is for the in-house fostering, the orange lines are for the IFAs, for yourselves. And again, it varies month to month about which one we're making most placements with. We will go to our in-house team and then go out to the IFA market with the same young people. And yeah, it very much depends on the needs of the young person that are coming through as to whether they're likely to be placed with the in-house service or with yourselves at the moment. If we then go on to the next slide, Chris. We just move forward one slide. Perfect. Yeah, so this slide shows a bit of a breakdown between our UASC population and our kind of Indigenous non-UASC population. So the first graph is about our Indigenous population. That's the majority of people that go into IFAs. You can see over the course of this last year, we're fairly steady, going from about 175 down to about 160 in terms of total number of placements at any given time. That is, again, kind of reflecting those previous graphs. And we've got the same trend on the next chart for our in-house fostering population. Again, that's decreased in a very similar way from a very similar number, about 177 to just over 160. So you can see that the mix in terms of where we've got our young people placed in fostering is about 50-50 between in-house and IFAs. And that's been fairly constant over the last few years in Cambridgeshire. The graph at the bottom shows the fostering population for our UASC population, which has shown a bit of a different trend to the other two graphs because that is an increasing number of young people. It started off at kind of 40, so they're much lower numbers overall. And in kind of January, it was approaching 50. It's come down a little bit since then, but the overall trend for our UASC population is upward. That means obviously that we have a few different pots to pick from when we're placing a young person, which we would try to make sure we get the right placement for our young people. We would hope that we can find carers that can care for the long term. And as you'll have seen from the referrals that come out from my team, we do often put out referrals that are asking for that, but we also have a mixture of those where we're looking for shorter term, kind of low, not a long term fostering placement, which might be for a variety of different reasons. And the two are equally needed. We also, as I'm sure you'll be aware, have what seems like an increasing number of emergency referrals that come out where we're looking for people at the relatively last minute. From my team's point of view in access to resources, knowing what vacancies are out there is really helpful, and having those kind of ongoing conversations about whether it is possible to make quite a last minute placement with yourselves is really important. But equally, those people who can keep a young child for a long period of time is really valuable. That's what we want for our children in care who are going to be in care for a long period, who want stability. We want that because it gives them the best possible outcomes. And we have equally had a bit of a series of kind of placement breakdowns over the last couple of years, certainly since I've been in this role, where people have been issuing relatively short periods of notice when they're having issues with young people. What I would say is please don't wait until it gets to that point to make contact with the Access to Resources team. Come to us early, let us know what the problems are, let us know what your concerns are, and we can try to work out a solution that enables us to support your carers, to support you, and to support that young person to maintain that placement. That is a really key thing from us as a local authority. We want to try to avoid having placement breakdowns, and we want to work with people to do that so that we have those longer term placements that produce better outcomes. And at the same time, by supporting your foster carers, of course, they're much more likely to want to continue on in that line of work, which is really important for yourselves as well. Okay, if we now move on to the Children's Sufficiency Strategy. Don't think that Caroline is about. Are you able to do that, Lucy?
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. Caroline's wasn't able to support. So, yes, thank you. Clues in the title with this one, which is we are currently reviewing our sufficiency strategy. Chris, if you wouldn't mind just tabbing across for me, please. I think I've got some boxes to come. Thank you. So you may have already seen the sufficiency strategy, which we have online. If you haven't, it is due a refresh, and this is our opportunity now to reflect back on the current strategy and look at options for the refresh. And it's probably fair to say it's very meaty, the current strategy. We have 4 of them. Chris, if you wouldn't mind just tabbing over. Thank you. We currently have 4 strategies, as you can see here. All are relatively meaty, and not all, I think, get the credit they're due. So the current strategies we have are the SEND strategy, a CWD strategy, a children and families, and a children in care. So we had the pleasure of having Ofsted in earlier this month, or earlier last month. And we had some good feedback from them, and I met with the lead inspector to have a conversation about our sufficiency plans. So all of that kind of good learning is going to go into the new strategy. But we certainly are very keen to make sure that the 4 strategies that we've got don't get lost, that they each have as much relevance and importance. And the plan to change that for future is to have 1 strategy in total. Chris, would you mind just tabbing over? So as you'd expect, in terms of timelines, we are working on that now. So the strategy, although due at any point this year, we've committed to our children's change board that this is going to be something we're going to have in place, or at least a first draft ready for June time. Sorry, Children's Improvement Board, not Change Board. So we've committed to them that actually this first stab of the refresh will be available to them for June. And then we hope to publish it later in the year. At the moment, what we're doing is we're working with a team of stakeholders across the council, and that includes our young people, parents and carers, health, as you'd expect. We all want them to feed into the new strategy to ensure it's co-produced. We are also seeking, and you're probably wondering where we're going with this next, is we're also keen to have providers feed into this. So we think it's really important, if you've seen some good strategies or you know how things could work with regards to sufficiency and sufficiency planning, then we have set up a very, very small questionnaire, just a few questions, which if you'd, well, I will send it in the link shortly. But if you wouldn't mind taking a look at that at some point in your busy schedules, just to give us your feedback, which of course we value. I'm going to pause there if anybody's got any queries or comments on that. Okay, perfect. I will send a copy of the link shortly, and I'd be really grateful for your responses. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, if we just skip on to the contract management bit, we'll come back to the discussion about our teenage cohort. Catherine Isaacs, who's going to present that, our head of corporate parenting, is just in another meeting at the minute, and as soon as she joins, we can have that discussion. But we'll just move on to contract management. I'm sure it's not the most exciting thing in the world for all of you, but it is one of those things that's just essential to make sure that everything works well, and to make sure that we're both supporting one another as best as we can. So within the current contract for our DPS, which we also tie in any spot purchases to the same kind of service specification. So whether you're on the contract or off the contract, you'll have the same service specification. We have a couple of little bits around our KPIs that we want to be looking at a bit more going forward than we might have done in the past. So we talk about having provider performance being monitored on a quarterly basis via a submission of KPI information from yourselves, and then potentially being subject to an annual monitoring visit or review following any kind of notifiable event or any major concerns being raised. So the first thing I'd say is that going forward, we want to be kind of living up to this on our end. We want to be having the KPIs, and we'll come on to a template in a minute, so that we give you what you need to tell us what we need to know. But we also want to be coming out more often to do quality assurance visits and just having general conversations, which is something that we will be doing going forward more and more. So some of you might have had a quality assurance visit in the last couple of months. Others will have that over the next year or so. We'll get around everyone, and that gives us all an opportunity to just share what you're doing well, so that we know what's going on. We can be assured that our young people are in the best possible provision, but it also gives us an opportunity to look at what you're doing and maybe make suggestions if there are other things that we can see that we know would work really well for you. So it will be kind of a two-way conversation. When we talk about a visit, it's not an inspection. It's not us coming out in order to try and trip you up. It's just us working with you to make sure that everything is set up as well as possible and that we're both working as well as we possibly can be. Within the service specification, we talk about 7 key performance indicators, which I've got listed. If you go on to the next slide, Chris. So the first 3 are around ensuring that our children and young people are physically, mentally, emotionally, and sexually healthy. You may have noticed over the last few months that we've been emailing out and asking providers to let us know a couple of basic things around: are our young people registered with a dentist? Are they up to date with an optician? Are they up to date with dental checks? Those kind of things. And they will all be covered within the KPIs that we will be emailing around. So going forward, we would have all that information. We wouldn't need to be doing it via ad hoc emails that we have been doing over the last few months. And that makes, this all combines to make sure that our young people have access to the right information and health issues so that they can make informed choices, which is what we all want for them. The second KPI is that our children and young people are safe from maltreatment, neglect, violence, exploitation, and crime, and learn to manage risk in their day-to-day lives. Again, I think we'd all say that that's absolutely what we want for our own children, for the children we're looking after. The third KPI talks about children and young people making sure that they attend and participate in educational training, and that's not specifically in a mainstream school, but in a much wider sense, whatever is relevant for that young person, to make sure that they have the right opportunities so they can achieve their academic potential or their vocational potential, depending on the young person and what is best for that young person. We go on to the next slide. Thank you. So the fourth key point is that children and young people enjoy their childhood. So first and foremost, whether you're looked after or not, a child is a child. They should be having fun. They should be having access to new opportunities. And that's something that's really important for us as a local authority for all of those that we have in our care. The fifth KPI that we talk about in our service spec is that children and young people make and maintain lifelong relationships with friends, families and carers. Obviously, depending on how long a young person is in that foster placement will make a big difference about whether or not it's a lifelong relationship, but they should be making positive relationships in any length of placement. The sixth KPI is around children and young people having the skills and being supported to make positive transitions through all changes in their lives. So again, that's more relevant for some ages than for others. And that will be kind of covered within our document as well. And the seventh and final one that we've got is that, well, it says children's homes. I think that our service spec might actually say IFAs, but that you guys have high aspirations for the children and young people in placement, and that placement is structurally robust and offers value for money. So part of that again comes back to what I was saying earlier around our issues. If you do need support, let us know early, and we can try to help and support and make sure that those placements do stay together as much as possible, and that if a placement does need to end, that it doesn't have a negative impact and a negative outcome for both our young person, but also for your carers. We move on to the next one. Yeah. So what does those 7 KPIs look like? Well, we'll be having a quarterly contract meeting going forward with providers. So within my team, we'll be splitting up the different providers that we've got on our DPS, but also those other providers who we have placements with, and arranging some quarterly contract monitoring meetings. That meeting will go through our KPIs, but it will also be an opportunity for us just to have an open and frank discussion about how things are going, about what we might need to change, suggestions that you might have for us, suggestions that we might have for you. It will be that kind of two-way dialogue in that meeting. These may be virtual, they may be face-to-face. I think as much as possible, we want to come out and see all of you guys face-to-face over the next year. So we will be trying to do them in that way as much as possible. And then we've composed a brief document. So I have also worked for a provider. I know that paperwork isn't necessarily the most exciting thing to be filling in. We will circulate this around. It's a bit small, so you don't need to try and read it at the minute, but it will be circulated around for comment, for development, and it will basically just inform each quarter those 7 different KPIs via a few different methods, so that we can track and measure, see where there might be issues. There are room for you to write in your own comments. There are room for you to tell us other things that you're doing really well. I absolutely want to hear first about what is going well for your young people that you have. I want to know those because they excite me most, but we also need to know the bits that aren't going well. And this document just allows us to look at both of those really. And that will be returned to us a couple of weeks before we then have those contract monitoring meetings. So we've all had the opportunity to just have a little look, see whether we've got any specific questions, and it shouldn't be too long a process really to do that. If we move on to the next slide, Chris, I think, yeah. So as I've kind of said, one of the things that we will be doing as part of this is coming out for QA visits. We'll then be writing up kind of reports for you guys, sharing it with you, getting your thoughts, and you'll have an opportunity to input into that. We use the CRAG tools for QA framework. So I don't know if everyone knows what they are, but it's the cross-regional group of different local authorities that gather together, share reports. So you won't necessarily have 4 different local authorities come out to visit you. If you've got children from those 4 different local authorities placed with you, we share reports, we share some information so that it streamlines things a little bit more. So we use their templates, and it might be that if you've got a different lead local authority through the CRAG process, that we might not come out to see you as much. We'll still have those regular contract monitoring meetings, but we might not need to come out as much to do the QA visits with you. Next slide, Chris. So the key takeaways are that we want to aspire to achieve continuous improvement in the quality of provision, and we want to help all of the IFAs that we work with to do that as well. We want to ensure best value, so that's part of our duty. We are the public purse. We need to make sure that we have good value that leads to really good quality provision for our young people, and the 2 of those have to be going hand in hand: best quality and at a reasonable price. And then the last takeaway is that all of our children and young people feel happy. We want them to feel safe, we want them to be healthy, and we want them to be making progress towards whatever outcomes they desire themselves. So that's going to be different for different young people. I know I've got 2 boys and they desire very different things. Likewise, those young people that we have placed in your IFAs will want different things from one another, and it's about making sure that we support them towards making those desired outcomes. I think that Catherine Isaacs has now joined us, so we can do our discussion on our teenage cohort.
I have. Sorry, Gavin. I was called into an urgent meeting that I had to chair. So apologies for missing the earlier part.
Do you want to introduce yourself first, and then go through a little bit?
I can. Hi everybody. I'm Catherine Isaacs, head of service for corporate parenting for Cambridgeshire. So I'm permanent head of service. I manage the children in care and the leaving care service, and I've been in post since October last year. So no longer new. I don't think I can say anymore. We've decided that 6 months is the cutoff. But I had asked to come today to be included, not to talk in lots of detail about specific individual children, but to talk a little bit about, I guess, where we're up to as a local authority and some of the particular challenges that we're facing in finding the right families for some of our children. You haven't got any slides for me, have you, Gavin? I'm just talking, aren't I? Sorry, everybody. I'm not.
Yeah, no, you're just talking.
It's all right. I'm not organised enough to do slides at the minute. I'm sorry, everybody. So we've got a cohort currently of 12 children. So in the sort of 12 to 15, no, 10 to 15 bracket, 12 children, 10 to 15 bracket that we are looking for long-term foster families for. And I guess in my experience in Cambridgeshire is that in terms of support services for fostering agencies and for children in our care, that we are reviewing and revitalising those and sort of retargeting them. So we have an in-house clinical team that does work. So unlike the last authority I was in, our in-house clinical team does work with children and foster carers from IFA agencies. So we have built-in clinical support. Most of their support is focused with the caring network, so working with supervising social workers and working with foster carers and working with social workers about understanding children's trauma, making sense of their presentations, thinking about how we can best support and care for them, and then where appropriate, looking at what therapeutic offer children need. I think that we're a very creative local authority in my experience so far in working with agencies where they've got built-in clinical support and a built-in therapeutic offer for both carers and children, and we're really open to commissioning that as well. We're working really robustly about our approach as a corporate parenting service, or a children in care service, about trauma. So I've got all of my staff are currently undergoing an introduction to trauma training through our virtual school, which involves wearing a virtual reality headset and experiencing some of the experiences that our children go through to help them make sense of why they might be presenting the way they are. That's an offer that if we have fostering agencies here that are interested in having more conversations with me about some of the specific children and we're interested in caring for them, I'm more than happy to work with our virtual school about looking at rolling that training offer out to fostering agencies and foster carers in particular as well, and supervising social workers. So again, being really creative in how we make sure that we're kind of joined up in our thinking about these children. We've got an amazingly robust virtual school who work really closely with us and with fostering agencies about supporting schools and carers in making sure that we've got the right support package in place for our children. So we've got lots of very creative additional support to make sure we're helping our children and young people achieve academically. We've got really good extracurricular offers built in. We've got some of our children accessing specific therapeutic support through school, where that's been assessed with our clinical team that that's the most appropriate place for them to access it. And we've got a really, so of the 10 to 15-year-olds that we're looking for foster placement for, all of them except one, I think, are in school, in mainstream school, and one of them is accessing an alternative provision. So we've got really good success at supporting our kids to remain in school wherever possible and coming up with good alternative education packages where that's not possible. In terms of the approach, our clinical team are all trained now in DDP level 1, and after the trauma training for all of my social work staff that's taking place in 2 weeks today, I think, we're also looking at rolling out PACE parenting model for the social workers and so that they have some like introduction to DDP, and we're also doing some relationship based training for them. So having a real model that puts the children and their experiences at the centre of our understanding of who they are and how they're presenting now, and how we support and respect our foster carers and their supervising social workers, but particularly our foster carers for our children as the people that are looking after them day to day, making those meaningful relationships day to day and making a difference to our children. So for the group of children that we're looking for carers for, actually in the vast majority, they're not at all exceptional. And I guess that's what I really want to think about is with all of you, is that I can see, I know from experience, I've worked in children in care for a very long time now, but there is a particular challenge for us in finding foster carers and fostering agencies that are interested in taking that leap into looking after our older cohort of children, even when they don't have particularly challenging needs, which the vast majority of the ones we're looking for don't. Lots of them have been in foster placements for a long time. Some of them are moving because their foster carers are retiring. Some of them are moving because the carers are not the right match for the children, rather than the children having any particular issues that we think would be any additional level of challenging for foster carers before, beyond looking after teenagers, which we all know is a challenge in itself. But we also all know within my service the absolute joy of finding the right placement for our children and supporting them in that, and seeing foster carers that are able to commit and care for those children. And we've got a very good placement stability, long-term placement stability rate. But I really want to focus on these children that need to move, and how we find the right kind of provision for them. So I'm really curious, whilst we have all of you here, to think about what would help, what would not help. In the event we've done with residential carers, and it's a model that I've used in other local authorities as well. I had proposed, and we've had some take up already of providers who would like to meet to hear about individual children. And I'm wondering whether for the children we're looking for placements, whether it would be helpful to do for me to get a short paragraph describing who they are, what they like, what they'd like from a foster carer, and getting going out to agencies to say, do you have any carers that might be interested? And we could do presentations to groups of supervising social workers and managers, and even to foster carers. I've done that across the board. I guess it's, this is an age group that we all know it's really hard to find the right carers for, but I want to remain, and do remain, really ambitious for our children, that's what we want for all of them. And I want to really think about how we can work together to find the right homes and the right families for them. And just to say, feedback from our children in care in council in Cambridgeshire has very helpfully been around using languages about homes and families rather than placements and carers. So I try deliberately to use the language that names the ambitions we have for our children, which is finding homes and families for them. Gavin, I don't know if you want to come in.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, so one of the things that we would ask from you today, and feel free to post on our feedback form at the end any kind of suggestions you've got, or put your hand up now and bring into the chat. But we're looking for ideas to be a bit more creative around how we find these homes and these longer term families for these young people. If there are things that we can do to support the IFAs, the foster carers, whatever it might be, if there are things that you need from us in order to make that work, then let us know. If there are things that you think are somewhat of a barrier, but you're not sure how to overcome it, but if those barriers were removed, then again, let us know, and we can have a look to try to see how we can work with you to remove those barriers. Because what we want at the end of the day is for all of these young people to have the right family, to have the right home, and to have the same opportunities in life as their peers. It's something that Catherine is obviously passionate about, and she's brought that to our local authority. All of us in my team are really overjoyed when we do find those kind of longer term placements as well. And so if there are things that we can do to assist in that, then do let us know. Don't just when we have a referral, if it doesn't quite match, go, well, we can move on from there. Have a conversation with us as and when those come out as well. Let us know what we can be doing. Let us know what would work. It is one of the things that we are potentially looking at developing a somewhat different offer, and having a service spec to put out via our DPS as well for this cohort of young people. And we want to make sure that when we do that, we've got the right service that works for you guys as well as for our young people. So if you've got any thoughts that you want to feed into that, please do let us know. Yeah, if anyone's got any kind of thoughts on that or questions, you can post them in the chat or ask them now if you want. I am going to leave a short period of awkward silence just in case that prompts anyone.
I think, Gavin, what I would definitely do is get paragraphs for each of the children with anonymised names, because I like to throw you like I did yesterday, and get those sent out to everyone that's here and to any other agencies that have been unable to attend, and offer the chance that we would offer a sort of trauma formulation presentation about them. So sort of 45 minutes hearing from the social worker and from our clinical team, and for a chance for you guys to ask any questions that you have about the children, and so that you can hear the journey they've been on, where they're at now, and the voice of these children about what they want from a placement. Because I'm really developing in Cambridge, making sure that when we're looking for placements for 10 to 15-year-olds, that we're hearing what they want, what they'd like from a placement, and whether that's they'd like the carer to have a cat or they'd like to have a big garden. It's helpful to bring to life what they're looking for, as well as what you all can offer, and for you to hear what we can offer as a local authority, and how creative and supportive and committed we are in terms of working with fostering agencies about finding the right families for our children.
Yeah, I'm sure that'd be really, really helpful, Catherine. I know that the number of referrals that must go into each of you providers at the minute must be phenomenal, and it's easy to go, well, we don't need to look beyond what's written there. But if you have queries about Cambridgeshire young people, you want to know more, you want to hear more, or get a bit more life to it than maybe is presented in the referral, come back to the Access to Resources team, let them know which young people you would like to know more about, and we can have further conversations. We're always happy to do that, and to give you whatever information you might have. Just reading a comment from Angela, we would value the opportunity to have a discussion about the needs of individual children and young people. It often needs to be bespoke. That's a good starting point. Yeah. So we are absolutely happy to have those conversations with whoever would like to do that. Let us know after this if you already have young people in mind from the referrals that have gone out. Lucy?
I was just going to ask if Angela's got any queries, or it might be yourself, Catherine, how we could host those. So would it be a Teams call, like you say, Catherine, 45 minutes or something, and we invite as many people along to hear the views? How would it work?
So I guess what I would suggest is that we would send out profiles of the children, that people could register interests, and some of them have got the same social worker, which will make it slightly easier. But
Yeah.
I guess it's that real focus here, which is why I didn't bring all of loads of detail here today, because I think it's not necessarily needed or appropriate for you all to hear lots of information about the 12 children. When what it does is rightly generate conversation and questions, but I'm have sort of day-to-day management of those children, but a chance for you to meet with me there, but with my social workers and one of our clinicians to hear about the specific individual children when we send out their, a summary profile where you think, oh, actually, I do have some carers that might suit that, and come and hear it, and then ask, well, what are the resources that we could commit, that you would like us to agree to committing to make it work, all of which we'd really welcome as a kind of a thoughtful conversation. I can see Angela's got her hand up, so I'm going to stop talking now.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. What I was going to suggest was, I think the ambitions that I'm hearing today is certainly great. It's lovely to hear, I think, where there feels like the passion's being renewed. And I'm not speaking too much out of turn, but it does feel like there's more passion, and that's very welcome. I think when, as an organisation, we believe that we work really hard on relationship building, and there's an opportunity, I think, when we're looking at bespoke services, particularly for the cohorts of young people that you're speaking about. It starts with a kind of joint purpose, doesn't it? And understanding what we're all aiming to achieve. I suppose, what we've experienced in the past has been, we have the ambition and there's perhaps not been the support that we've probably needed to be able to make it happen. So we've had some of these conversations before, and we really look forward to the opportunity of doing something similar again. And perhaps, if there are key children and young people who need specific geography, or I'm thinking about trying to maintain school and education support, that's often a starting point for us, given that we are based in Cambridgeshire anyway, and have a lot of Cambridgeshire families. It's also about looking at how far, I think, setting the agenda for how far we can stretch things, or where ambition might exist, exactly where the kind of compromises might be, because that way then, when we are faced with so many referrals, the majority of which we can't do anything with because we're all struggling with capacity of family availability, we can actually start to prioritize. So I think there's probably a very big open door here from everybody. I'm sure everybody believes the same as what we do. Let's get it started and start having some conversations.
From my perspective, Angela, what I can say, I recognise that I'm managing a service that's quite bruised. I realise this is being recorded, so I'm going to say it politely, but I'm the fifth head of service they had last year. Martin, our new exec director, so our DCS, is the fourth. He can never remember if it's the fourth director in 5 years or the fifth director in 4 years, but it's one of those two. They've had a lot of change at the top, and managers, and we all, as leadership team in Cambridgeshire, are now all permanently appointed and all committed. And we recognise that there's been a period where our staff and our partner agencies across the board have experienced multiple changes in leaders, multiple changes in messages, multiple changes in focus. And I guess that's why I wanted to come here and sort of lay my colours to the mast. I'm really passionate about children in care and finding the right homes for them and the right support networks for them. I'm really open to creative conversations. You know, I love the idea of working with fostering agencies, and particularly those in Cambridgeshire, because we want as many of our kids to be as local as we can. And I've got a really open door policy with my staff. I recognise that I'm working with a staff group that are not used to having a manager that wants to be challenged and held to account. And so I'm learning my way around that. Sometimes I say to them, you know, what about this? And they all go off and do it and then come back and say, well, I didn't think it was a good idea. And I come from a local authority where my social workers would have said, you can get lost, I'm not doing that, it's a terrible idea. So I'm learning to work with them, they're learning to work with me, and hopefully that with our agencies that's the same message. You know, I really welcome people. I will put my email address in the chat. I'm more than happy for people to ring me and ask, or email and ask to book times just to hear your experiences and what didn't work and what you would like to happen or see, or what ideas you had that you tried that you'd be willing to try again. And I appreciate for some of you that means doing things again, and that will no doubt have some frustrations. You know, to give you an example, I got tasked when I started in Cambridgeshire 7 months ago now to creating a US team that not only had existed 4 years ago and been shut down, but the team had all been told that it was going that a US team was going to be created the year before, and then it never happened. And you'll see that this week the adverts have gone out for a US team. So, you know, I'm a person that believes in, you know, the way that things are happening in Cambridgeshire. I'm only going to show you all by the results and what I do, and the meaning of what, you know, talking is one thing, but actually the results at the other end are what's important. And, you know, I'm absolutely committed to supporting my staff to re-engage with their fire and their ambition for our children and young people. And, you know, we really want to develop relationships with fostering agencies, with residential providers, and with all of the community resources that exist in Cambridgeshire, of which there are many, to kind of redevelop the strength of relationship that was once there and that has got lost for lots of reasons along the way.
Yeah, I would echo that as well, Catherine. And just from a children's commissioning point of view, Gavin did flag right at the beginning, but we are going to be hosting these on a quarterly basis now. Some of the providers in the room will have already had some conversations with me in my recent appointment of being here for sort of the last 5 months or so. But the vision going forward is we want to have regular engaging forums with you, but equally we will be stepping up our contract management cycles again, which we haven't had the capacity since the decoupling, certainly, to be able to pick those things back up. So these are all things for the future, and I think hopefully this session today is pivotal for our position of change and where we want to be, not perhaps where we have been in the past. But it's been a really helpful session, and we're really grateful for everyone joining, and we're certainly going to look forward to seeing everybody again in the next forum. So thank you. Gavin, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, so does anyone else have any other questions on that, or shall we move on? I'm assuming that's a legacy hand, Angela.
I can see also someone's put in, thank you for the feedback about the enthusiasm, definitely there, about the lack paperwork and completing the child's story. So I guess there's two things there. Is one is I have had some agencies chasing paperwork that they've asked for that they haven't had. You know, again, I'll put my email address in the chat now, just send it directly to me and I'll pick that up. And we are looking at, you know, Cambridgeshire doesn't have as high a level of administrative support as I'm used to, and my social workers have much higher caseloads. So to give you an example, in my last local authority, social workers had an average of 12 children, and in Cambridgeshire it's currently 20. By the time we have the UASC service created and some other bits that we're doing, I'm hoping we'll get our social workers caseloads down to 16, and that will make a real difference in terms of their capacity, to do things that they need to do, like send forms to everyone, which shouldn't be a social work task, but is here, and I'll work on that separately. But far more importantly is the second part about the child's story, is that I am rewriting and working on our life story commitments. So I really like to see a movement away from people thinking about life story as a standalone piece of work and thinking about how it is a kind of thread that weaves through all of our work. So including fostering agencies, including social workers, including schools, everyone plays a role in our children in care's lives, and we need to make sure that we're capturing that and really supporting our children to understand why they're living where they're living, the decisions that have been made about them, and helping them make sense of where they're at now and where they see themselves in the future. So Cambridge has just invested in doing the Bright Spots survey, for those of you that know about it, which is an independent survey done by Core and Voice, and we will get the full analysis back in a couple of months, but asks all of those questions. You know, do you have an important adult, 3 important adults in your life that you trust? Do you like your carers? Do you feel safe where you are? Do you understand why you're in care? Do you see enough of your parents? Do you see enough of your siblings? I've had some initial analysis that's is not a surprise to me, but definitely says, A, there's lots to celebrate. Almost all our children feel safe, who are under 16 feel safe and happy where they're living, which is great and something that I want to continue to build on. But you know, there's some real lessons for us about, do our children understand why they're in care? Do they understand why they're living where they're living? Do they understand if they're not living with their brothers and sisters, why they're not living with them? And so that's definitely a piece of work that I'm working on, and a policy that we will be launching. But I want to be really clear that that's not a social worker's job in isolation. You know, life story commitments are about bringing in foster carers, bringing in supervising social workers, bringing in schools and TAs and you know, mentors, whoever our children and young people have in their lives, to help them understand what's going on for them, being able to write reflective pieces. You know, when our children move on from foster carers, I've just been chairing a meeting about that before I joined this one, but you know, where they move on really suddenly and the foster carers struggle with the goodbye, what else can we do? Can we get the foster carers to write a letter about what went well and also why that child's moved on, and making sure that everyone recognises that the vitally important relationship that they play in those children's lives. You know, I've worked with a social worker who is still in touch with children that she was the social worker for 30 years ago. Now, I'm not suggesting everyone can do that or has the time to do that, but I think the ambition is that they know that social worker knew what an impact she had on those children's lives, and those children continue to reflect back to adults now, 30 years later, reflect back what important role she played in their lives. And I think that's a, you know, a joint vision that I'm asking for my service, and I'm asking all of the agencies that work with us to sort of buy into and be ambitious, and you know, to recognize these are not easy asks. This is not easy work. These are children who've got complex needs and complex trauma. But by having an open and frank conversation and relationship with each other, we can be really ambitious for them, and we can be really creative in what makes that work.
Thank you. I think that was really informative, Catherine, and the enthusiasm just kind of shines through, doesn't it? If we move on from that, just to change tracks a little bit onto the provider fee change strategy, which my colleague Lizzie is going to present.
Yeah, thanks Gavin. Yeah, haven't said hello yet. So my name's Lizzie Robertson. I'm another one of the children's commissioning managers. Doubt very much that anyone's met me, because I know, Catherine, you said you can't say you're new at 6 months. I'm 9 months in, so I certainly can't say that I'm new. Not anymore, I've been told. But I'm here just to run very briefly through our very new provider fee change strategy, probably otherwise known as the uplift strategy. Of course, we don't ever intend for prices to go down, but we need to make sure that we have a strategy that covers all bases. So it is the provider fee change strategy. Before I run through the slides, just a point to note, an interesting one. When we decided to have this strategy and we looked far and wide at other councils, either just online or through the other councils that we have good contacts with, I was unable to find a full ready to go example of a uplift strategy for the children's commissioning world. They are available in the adults commissioning side of things, but I couldn't find one example. So we could be one of the first, who knows? But we felt it was very important for us to have a clear message on how we uplift our providers. So this is relevant to across the board. So it's not just for fostering, it's not just for children in care, it's for all of our commissioned providers. And I'll run through the details now. So if you want to move to the next slide, please. Chris, I think you're driving, aren't you? Thank you. So just this slide's got quite a lot of words on there, and all of this is available on our website, and I'll be putting the link in the chat after this. But we've got some primary aims for our strategy. They're quite long term, and we're not intending on these changing anytime soon. Obviously, we will reflect regularly on them, but at the moment, our aims under the fee change strategy are to have services which are sustainable, value for money, and reflect the long term. So actually lots of the things that have been said today is in tune with that. So that's, I hope you'll all agree that they're quite sensible aims. We also want to develop sustainable quality provision that's local to us. So I know that's quite an interesting one. What's local to some is not to others, but it's really important that we have our services and what the children access is local to them for so many reasons. So we'll look at that when we're looking at who gets an uplift and why. And as well as that, the other very important part is about how people contract with us. You've already had a bit of a conversation about the DPS. That's at the moment one of our favourite ways for providers to contract with us. So if you're on the DPS, then you're quite likely to get a more of a favourable outcome than if you weren't, for example. But that also includes our other frameworks and block contracts. So more of our long-term contractual arrangements are what we would see as a good thing if you're requesting an uplift. What we'll be doing on a regular basis, so a 12-month cycle, we'll be looking at those things that you can see in blue. We'll be looking at them regularly, so we'll be doing an analysis on the demand. So all the previous requests that have come in the last sort of 12 months to 18 months, we'll be looking at them as a reflection to see what people have been asking for and why, and that will give us a good idea of what's happening in the market. But we'll be looking at other things as well. So updates of the sufficiency strategy, collaboration with yourselves. So the feedback that you give us, either at forums like this or either through emails to Catherine. Catherine has very boldly given you her email address. Although the feedback will be so valuable to us to understand the bigger picture and how we uplift going forward. And the contract management meetings that many of you will be getting in your diary regularly, that's a really good opportunity. I would say make the most of those with your contract manager if you've got a bugbear, an issue, a problem, so we don't get a surprise when you put that request in that you're asking what we might immediately feel is far too much, but because you haven't had that conversation already with the contract manager and try to unpick that problem perhaps before it escalates. So we'll be looking at all of that. So feedback is incredibly important. Obviously, we need to look at our budget as a council. So we can't just dish out money left, right and centre, as you'll know, but we need to look at what the budget's happening in the next couple of years, each year when we review. So we'll be doing all of that. CRAG was mentioned. We are part of the CRAG partnership, the County Cross Regional Arrangements Group. I don't know if I get that right, but I try and remember it. So when providers ask for an uplift, we need to double check that they're not owned by sort of a lead local authority from another council, and if they are, obviously we'll refer to them to take a steer on what we think the uplift would be. So we are going to be influenced by some of the CRAG decisions, but all of that, what does your contract say? Always go to that and see what it says about payments, finances, uplifts, what you're eligible for, but then that's how you'll know primarily what you're able to get. Next slide, please. So what's new? Well, other than the fact that there is a strategy now, we didn't have one before the 1st of April. The things you'll then see, which we will see as positive changes with any strategy, it normally uncovers things that you can do differently, can do better. And we've certainly found some internal things that we can do. I've already mentioned the annual review. That's a really important part of the strategy. You'll see a rationale that comes up on the website regularly. So probably, like I said, every 12 months we'll pick a date, and every 12 months it might be a smaller document, it might be a statement, but it will guide you on what we're going to be doing that year and how we can uplift. And it might be that one market is going to have a slightly different approach than another. We might have found out that there's a market that's at pressure for whatever reason, and actually we need to focus our resources and our money on that market, and we'll share that then. looked at our business process. So with the strategy, we've uncovered lots of things that we can do internally to improve the way we work as a team. One of those things that you will see is the online form. I'll show you an example of that in a moment. But when you, prior to the 1st of April, for those of you that have requested an uplift in the past, you will have gone to the person that you know, or you would have sent an email into a generic inbox and probably hoped for the best. That's not good enough. We recognise that that had lots of flaws in it, so we put an online form now available on our website. Everybody gets the same questions. You can all see exactly what we're after as well. So rather than you sending in things piecemeal, and obviously the BAF form that you used to send in, for us to then ask questions on the back of it that we weren't quite clear about, just answer all those questions there and then, online, job done. So that hopefully you'll see that as an improvement. You'll also receive some renewed terms and conditions. Many of you will know that as Appendix 23. They have changed, so they are with our legal team at the moment, but not too significantly, so don't be alarmed. There are still 2 points in the year in which we will allocate an uplift if it's successful, and that's the 1st of September and the 1st of April. Prior to that, you'll have noticed, if anyone's read in detail the terms and conditions, that we had what is called fee change windows. So technically, providers were only allowed to request an uplift in two windows, a couple of months a year. But actually, we found that you were wanting to request when you felt like it. Why not? So we've taken those windows out and actually just put 2 deadlines in. So you can request up to once a year. Once a year is eligible. You can request whenever you like. If it's before the 1st of June, you'll be considered at panel ready for the 1st of September payment. If you request and it gets in before the 1st of January, we'll then consider it in the new year, ready for the April payment. So you'll see we've given ourselves plenty of time to have that breathing space to make those decisions on who's going to be uplifted. To give you an example of what we have to deal with, it's great we have so many providers, but in the last 12 months that when we looked at what was coming in, there was 82 requests that came in. So 82 divided by 2, if it was evenly split, around 40 for each deadline. That's quite a lot if you've given yourself a window where you actually have to make an outcome 24 hours later. So it does make business sense, and hopefully we'll meet all those expectations we plan to anyway with you. 2 more things then. Obviously, I've talked about the engagement. Hopefully you'll see lots more of that from us. We really see that as a positive change for the team going forward, and these forums are one way to do that. And another part of the changes that give you confidence in how we're making the decisions is that we'll be using a fee change calculator. So those things that I mentioned at the beginning, those aims in the strategy, we've converted them into a calculator. So when we're at panel, we can punch the numbers in and it will come up with an outcome, rather than us sort of looking at things and flicking through tabs, which can be quite time consuming. We're doing it across the piece, so hopefully there'll be that more consistency as well. So next slide, please. Nearly finished. We've just got 2 more slides. So this is what you'll see. If in doubt, go straight to our website. So I'll be putting this link in the chat, but this will tell you everything that you need to know. So whenever anything changes in the process, if the form gets updated, it's all here. So it goes straight to the website every time you want to consider putting in for a request for an uplift. This is where any of our aims will change, or if we've got some new rationale to how we're doing things. So it will all be here for you to see. Next slide, please, and the final one. So this is the online application form. So this link is also on our website. So all you'd need to do is scroll down onto that page that you just saw, click on the online form and answer the questions. You just need to make sure you've got a few things to hand. So obviously you'll need to know how much you're asking for. You'll need to know your company's house number, for example. So go on, have a look, and then you might need to get prepared and go back on and fill it in. Once you've submitted that, you'll get a little message that says, thank you very much. Your request is only complete if you also download and send in via email the budgetary analysis form, which you will also find on our website that you can download. 2 separate things that have to be done. They can't be done together because of firewall issues, but those are the 2 things you now need to do to submit a request. So that's the major change. We hope it's much more efficient and transparent for you. And the other change obviously is deadlines, not windows. but we have it all packaged in a lovely strategy, which we're very pleased about. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lizzie. Yeah, one of the other small things, so obviously paperwork is one of the things that have come up a couple of times today. We'll be looking to send out anything that requires a signature, including the letters to make your offer after the fee change window, via e-sign. So that'll include things like the IPAs that will be coming out that way, which just makes it much easier for you guys to sign and return, and for us to keep track of everything, so we can follow everything up. But yeah, did anyone have any questions about the fee change windows or anything to do with what Lizzie's just talked about? No? Excellent. I have just put into the chat a quick feedback form, which you're welcome to complete while we do the next little section. It'd be really helpful if every provider who's here could fill it out. We've done this at the other events, and from a personal point of view, I'd really like the IFA event to have the most responses, just because I'm slightly competitive. So if you could fill that out, that would really help me out. But it'll also help to inform what we're doing going forward. So, you know, we'll look at that in a second. Lucy?
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, Gavin. It was just to touch on what you've said there about my experience in doing these forums across a number of different authorities is we want these, and forgive me for those I've already spoken to provider-wise about this, just for repeating myself, but we want this to be a co-produced event every quarter. I really don't want these to be events where we sit and talk at you every quarter. We want it to be co-produced, and we want to know what you guys want to hear about for future forums, so we aren't constantly setting the agenda on what we think you would be interested in. So there is no question too silly or query. If you think actually we're really interested in certain process or protocols, we'll bring in guest speakers specifically to talk around that and to support and develop you. So please do take the time to fill out the survey, because it does avoid then us potentially talking or spending time talking about something at the next forum that might not be so relevant. So if there is something pressing, please fill that out. Let us know.
Yeah, absolutely. If there's particular guests that you think would be useful to hear from, let us know. If it's Brad Pitt, we might not get him, but if it's an Ofsted inspector, we've got a bit more chance. So, you know, if you do have specific areas that you'd like, let us know in that feedback form. But if anyone's got any kind of questions about today's event that they'd just like to ask now, either in the chat or verbally, this is your opportunity for some verbal feedback, but you can also include it within that feedback form. Yep, Ryan?
Yeah, hi everyone. It's more a kind of observation than a question. I think quite a lot of us have been working with Cambridge for many, many years, and I think we're probably all very encouraged by what's been said today. And I appreciate that, Gavin, Lucy, I met with you fairly recently anyway, but I think just to hear other people say it, like someone else touched on, the enthusiasm and the ambition, I think is something that hasn't been there for a period of time. So I think that's a real positive in terms of moving forward. And yeah, I really hope this is kind of that starting point of actually there being more engagement with IFAs, and actually that working together, working in partnership to kind of start to address the needs of the young people that we see coming through. So I think that's an element that hasn't probably been there for a period of time. So I'm really encouraged by what you guys have said today.
Thank you. Yeah, you can see we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. And if there are different people from Cambridgeshire that come along to the next event from different areas, you'll see that they've got the same viewpoint as well. We will be posting not just this forum, but all of the other forums that we've had for support accommodation, residential and SEND online for people to view who couldn't make it. If you look at any of those, the same kind of passion comes through from various different speakers who were on those as well. So we are definitely all in the same position. We can't move forward on our own. We need to move forward with you guys in partnership, and that's, you know, what we want to do. We want to be working with you so that we're all in it together, really. Does anyone else have any questions? No? Okay, so the next event that we're going to have is going to be in person, which I certainly prefer to meet people face to face, and it's a little bit easier to interact, so we can do things in a slightly different way when we're in there. So it's going to be at our new Shire Hall venue, which is in Alconbury Wells. Those of you who are local providers, that should be a bit easier to attend. We were originally considering doing things in a kind of hybrid way, but our previous attempt at that didn't quite work the way that we wanted it to. So we're going to alternate having face-to-face meetings and then doing ones on Teams for those who can't make it face-to-face. So yeah, the next one is going to be on the 28th of August at 2 p.m. New Shire Hall, Alconbury Wells. We will potentially look at things like Ofsted inspections, how our quarterly monitoring things are going, how you guys find it, the feedback we've got from you. But if you have specific things that you want to be looking at there, fill it out in that form. We will take your views into consideration. It might not be for the next one that we bring those items, depending on what it is, but we will definitely be considering them for our future events. So yeah, that's the end of today's event. I would really appreciate everyone to fill in that form, but other than that, you are free to go and have a few minutes back of your day.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. And please do email me if you want anything from my service or me.
Thank you.
Take care.
I think I probably will email